Hello, Sia. Thank you so much for joining my internal communication series that I run on my blog. In this series, I talk to thought leaders and on a variety of topics, including culture, crisis, change, executive presence. So I'm very delighted to have you on the show, and
Thank you for having me, Anisu.
fantastic. And it'll be great if you could quickly introduce yourself for our audiences, and then we can get started.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Sia Papageorgiou, and I'm a strategic communication consultant and trainer, and I'm based in Melbourne, Australia.
Fantastic. And I know you've been also very involved with a lot of research around leadership communication. So let me begin by asking you, what's your understanding of leadership communication? Then why do you think it's important? Really, what works about leadership communications?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, effective leadership communication is probably the most important skill for a leader to possess. These are the people that drive organizational culture. They drive strategic alignment. They drive a sense of belonging for the organization and the people that work in the organization. So, I'm sure you've heard the saying, people don't leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses. Okay,
Right.
so if our leaders aren't good at communicating, then there's a real problem. And going to your point about research, I actually just read a report the other day. It's a few years old, but really a powerful stuff, and it was conducted by Provoke, or was called back then the Holmes Report, and it found that the cost of poor communication it reached something like $62 million in the US and the UK alone. Okay, and that equated to around $26,000 per employee. So having leaders that know how to communicate and can communicate well in an organization is critically important.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so let me ask you, why why is it, that leadership communication not given as much importance? I mean, why is there so much of resistance in terms of thinking about this?
Look, it's a topic that we've been talking about for decades. And even again, looking at something like the Gatehouse 2020 State of the Sector report was identified as one of the top 3 barriers to effective internal communication. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that some leaders don't understand that effective communication is even part of their role. Okay, and I think so we have a lot of work to do as strategic communication professionals to educate the organization, to build leadership communication capacity, to build organizational communication capacity. So our leaders and the employees that work in our organizations have a good understanding of what is good communication and what does good communication mean for the organization's bottom line. Because everything we do in the communication space, as we know, has an effect ultimately on the bottom line of the organization, and that creates alignment. And that is what organizations want to achieve, strategic alignment. They want to have employees who know why they work there, know where the organization's headed, and feel a sense of belonging and can advocate on behalf of the organization.
Fantastic. And so there is a recent research report which I read, which says that leadership is a conversation. So, what's your take on that? And, how does communication really play a role in this?
Yeah, I think communication, is the biggest, the most important skill for a leader. But this is what strikes me as odd. All you have to do is pick up a job description for a leadership position or a management position, and just look at how many times the word communication features in that job description. Okay, and yet organizations aren't investing in their leaders. They're not investing in skilling their leaders, and communication professionals have not yet mastered how to help leaders become better communicators. These days, if we're talking about things like conversations, these days, yes, good, effective communication is a conversation. And you look at those who do it really well, the leaders we keep reading about in research and in articles online. They are the people who understand it's really important to get to know their people. It's important to just get out there, be visible, give employees a voice, give them an opportunity to connect with the leaders of the organisation. And that's not just at the, say, immediate manager and supervisor level, because, most employees obviously will have regular access to their immediate manager and supervisor, but
Right.
look at opportunities to give to close the gap between, say the most senior leaders in the organisation and the employees who do the most important work in the organisation. And every time I have conducted research for an organisation, that is where the biggest gap lies. And you'd be surprised still at how many leaders I interview who say to me, oh, no, we communicate very well in this organisation. And then you have a conversation with the front line and they tell me that they're the last to find out about anything. Nobody gives them the time of day. Nobody says thank you for a job well done. And they get most of their information from their peers. So absolutely, it's a conversation and absolutely it's important.
Very interesting insights. And, so related to that, what's your advice in terms of how can communicators get better at advising leaders on how to, communicate better?
And so this should be number one on a communication professional's radar. Okay. As I said earlier, if you just look at the result in the Gatehouse State of the Sector report, for example, it's still one of the top 3 barriers. We've been talking about it for decades. Okay, we have to, if we want to be seen as strategic communication professionals, if we want a seat at that executive table, we have to act like strategic communication professionals. So we ourselves need to understand that our number one priority is building leadership communication capacity and building organisational communication capacity. First things first, I would suggest that communication professionals create a framework for how the organisation communicates through its leaders and helping those leaders communicate well. Okay, so first things first, what does good communication look like in this organisation, and how can we get our leaders to do that? I think we also play a role in helping our leaders understand that communication is a key part of their role. Okay. I mean, I don't think you'll find any C-suite executive who doesn't understand the bottom line impact of effective communication. But there are many leaders in an organisation and they have many skill sets. And particularly when you're talking about that middle layer of management, some of those people never had aspirations to become leaders and they've been put into these positions and they don't know how to communicate. So you can't tell a leader it's your job to communicate if you don't help them do that well. So another thing we need to be doing is looking for opportunities to train our leaders. Okay. Now, obviously, recognizing that leaders are busy people, they don't have a lot of time. So making it easy for them. What support can we give them? Can we create a module on communication through an existing mechanism for them, something that they're already doing, so it doesn't add to their already busy workload? And giving them the tools. One of the simplest things I did many years ago when I was working in-house was creating, I called it I've gone blank now. It was basically a simple template where I would give key messages to the leaders in the business, and then they would use that as part of their meetings. And so it was just a manager template, very simple format. But what it did, it helped them to communicate the key organisational messages in a much more consistent way. And they didn't have to do the work. So our team did it for them. But further to that, creating space for leaders to go and help themselves, giving them those toolkits, giving them the information they need to be able to do their job. So I think that's very important. Another thing I think we should be doing is and this is not just the role of a communication professional, is to make them accountable for communication, okay? And to reward those who do it well. So call out those people who are great communicators in your organisation, the leaders in the organisation who are great communicators. use their what they've done to show the rest of the leadership group that this is what good communication looks like, and this is what it means for the employees and the organisation. So yeah, they're just some ideas I have.
Fantastic. So, what are some of the trends that you spot with leadership communication, especially now with COVID-19 and all that's happening around the world? What are some of the trends you spot?
Well, I just want to make a point about, before I share some trends, about the importance of getting the fundamentals right, okay? Because it's one thing to look at, say, what is a trend in this area? What is a brand new channel? Everyone focuses on, the latest thing or the latest piece of technology. But if you haven't got the fundamentals right, if your leaders don't know that it's their job to communicate, they don't have the tools, they don't have the support, they don't have the training, the CEO of the organisation, the most senior leaders in the organisation don't champion effective communication practices, then no trend or channel or piece of technology is going to help you. But certainly when we're looking at what's happened this year, some of the examples that come to mind are the use of obviously more video, okay, and a lot more compassion and empathy and care in the communication that has been shared by leaders. And those leaders that are well, who do their job well and communicate well, are those people who can demonstrate a bit of vulnerability, okay? And one of the probably the best examples I saw from earlier this year was the CEO of Marriott International, Arnie Sorensen, who addressed his employees all around the world through a very compelling video, displayed emotion, and it was a great, authentic video. So I think that's absolutely an example. What else? And at the end of the day, even though he copped slack for how the organisation treated ultimately, so your actions and your words and your actions have to match, okay? So it's no good just getting out there on a video and saying something if you're not going to do what you say you're going to do. But anyway, as a video, it was a very compelling video. I think too, just getting out there and meeting your people where they are, these days, and particularly now through COVID, we don't have the luxury of meeting in the organisation. So if that's on Skype, if that's on Zoom, if that's a phone call, just meeting people where they are and maintaining that visibility and that connection, I think is really, really important. And also, it's obviously demonstrated the importance of enterprise social networks, okay? So, if I think all of us saw that meme that was floating around on social, what drove your digital transformation this year? Was it, the CFO, something else, or COVID-19? So COVID-19's forced us to get online. And I think, from a leadership perspective, it's really important that leaders continue to interact with their people, get to know what concerns them, and give them a voice,
Yeah. Great points. And I know you alluded to the, the Marriott CEO's message, but are there any examples, any anecdotes from your experience, any of your consulting work where you have seen leaders do really well with leadership communications, or people who have not done it really well? So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny when you work with organizations, you get to see both the good and the bad and the very ugly. But probably my most recent experience, I did some work with an organization here in Australia called MBN Co. And their CEO at the time, he's now left the organisation, was an amazing communicator, and he would hold regular roadshows with not only his leadership group, so the different levels of leadership, but also the entire organisation. And it makes the job of the communication professional so much easier when the most senior person in the organisation understands what good communication looks like. I worked many years ago for a large federal government agency, and I'll never forget two of my leaders, really senior leaders, both deputy commissioner and assistant commissioner in this organisation, who taught me so much about effective leadership practices and good communication. And one in particular, David, he would visit. He was based in Sydney. He would travel around the country visiting sites for various reasons. To conduct meetings with his senior directors, but he would always make time to go out on the floor and meet with people. And he had his own office where he could shut the door and work in a private area, but he always chose out to go out on the floor. And what really struck me with this individual was he always introduced himself to people in the office as David. And so some of the more junior staff who didn't know who he was had no idea that the deputy commissioner of the entire business was sitting right next to them. But he would just go up to people and say, "Hi, I'm David. Is this a spare seat? Can I please sit here?" And he would take an interest. And one other thing that I really loved about him, he would go around, because he was the deputy commissioner of the service delivery area of this organisation. And so he would go into the contact centre and he would just sit next to an operative and listen in to their calls with them, just to get an idea about what their people were asking, okay, and how our people were dealing with those queries. So those types of leaders really inspire me, and I just love it when I meet them and when I hear their stories. And when you speak to the employees on the other end, okay, they're the people they talk about. They're the people that creates trust. It creates engagement. It creates a sense of belonging and a sense of we're all in the same organisation doing the same work, working towards the same goal.
Got it. Brilliant. And as we wrap up, Sia, I just wanted to ask any other advice you have for leaders in terms of how they can get better with communications.
Yeah, absolutely. Go and speak to your comms team. Number one, that's what they're there for. They are there to support you. Go and speak to your communication team for assistance. And I would encourage leaders to, particularly those who don't feel so comfortable communicating, just be brave. Nobody's expecting you to be the best presenter on the planet or be the best writer, but they do expect you to show up. They do expect you to be visible, and they do expect you to have conversations. So get out there and meet your people where they are, and I guarantee you're going to see results.
Fantastic. This has been brilliant. Thank you so much, Sia. I think this has been exciting to talk to you and great insights that you've shared. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Amos. It's my pleasure.
Okay.